extremists. Basically, that's what it comes down to. There's extremists in everything.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, cool. On that note, welcome to another episode of the Alphawaves pod.
Welcome, guys.
You've got
and
Kam back in the
girls.
building.
Whoop whoop. But what? All right, let's air out our dirty laundry. Love it. Love to see it.
I love the fact that I caught you off guard with it.
I was whooping as well. You fully kicked me when I was up.
Yeah, like that.
Nearly missed that.
Like that. No, episode 20.
Yes, episode 20.
This one's
Oh
about
my
not acceptance,
know,
representation. We've been talking about acceptance off
Yes,
cam.
we have. But that was an off the record
Yeah.
combo.
Yeah,
But yes, on the record, we are talking about representation.
100%.
Yes, we are.
I mean, it's been a minute since they heard your voice, so what's happening with you?
Darren, can you? I need to.
Jeez,
I need to hear episode 19.
19.5.
19.5. I'm guessing
bite
it was
size.
about me. But yes, we are here and we're happy to be here.
No, definitely. It's good to have you back in the building. No, that's the last one I'm going to say. No, it's good to be here. It's good to be here.
Yes, it is good
You
to
look
be
well.
here. Well rested.
You look well rested.
I do look well. It's
No, you
'cause
do look well. You do look
Thank
well.
you. I put on makeup today.
Okay, made an effort for the people.
I did. I saw the videos and I was like, this is actually online. Me. For real.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
So yes, here we are. You look well also.
I mean, I don't do too bad.
Why are we small talking?
I have no idea. Like we just
Let's
didn't speak an hour before we even started this. But anyway, let's get into
That's
it.
so true. Yes, let's get into it. So where do you stand on representation today?
I feel representation is obviously a important part of our communities.
Yes.
It's an encouraging thing. But there's always going to be controversy with representation. As in, is it just token representation? Are things being represented correctly? Part of this came into my mind just over the past couple months with some of the programming that we've been seeing. Some of the conversations that I've been privy to, things about stuff like Top Boy and different, I don't know if you want to call them No, I don't want to call them influencers. I think they deserve more than that.
Different people in the public eye.
Yeah, like presenters breaking into some of these spaces from our communities. But like, it's like, how much of it is genuine? And how much of it is just like, because I don't know the facts and figures, but a lot of the companies that were doing a lot of the representation of black and ethnic communities off the back of George Floyd, a lot of them have already swerved back to what they was doing before. So they had that big thing where they was trying to be so inclusive, but then it's like, all right, now it's time. Financial cuts are coming. It's time to.
That's a big thing in the news right now. The financial cuts and people being let go with larger companies.
So it's like, how genuine is representation?
Kind of being let go.
Exactly.
Also.
Exactly.
Or being let go first.
What they say, last one's in, first one's out. It's crazy. It's crazy. So how do you feel about representation? Like, how genuine do you feel a lot of the representation that we have seen over the past few years?
I think it's nice to see representation grow, especially on channels like Netflix or I don't know if it's a channel, but whatever it is, platform. Yeah. So I hope that doesn't go with these cuts. But I don't know. I find it really interesting what you said about token representation, because I feel like, especially with an Indian background, I feel like in certain programs that happens quite a lot. Like there's always a certain type of Indian that 100%. You see, and it's interesting because I wonder if that does more. It's hard because on the one hand, it's nice to be seen and it's nice to have that there. But then on the other hand, I wonder if that does more harm than good too.
Let me ask you something. Like, so it's like the most common. We're in England, EastEnders, growing up. I think they all, not always, but there's pretty much been the period where there's always been an Indian family or an Indian person, a black person, etc. Now this could go two ways. When you see Indian on the screen, do you feel represented regardless of what they're doing?
That is such a good question. Like me personally, do I feel not really, not really. I feel like in certain shows, recent shows like Sex Education, for example.
I haven't seen it.
It's funny, you should watch it. But I feel like that is interesting because you see Indian characters who aren't the typical Indian characters that you'd normally see.
Okay.
And in programs like EastEnders, I definitely did not always feel represented. I feel like certain elements were there in terms of like, family dynamic and stuff like that, but not really.
So the crazy
like
thing,
it's a very specific experience that's shown on TV, and I don't feel like I've had that specific experience. But then it's weird to me that is the only experience that's seen most often.
Yeah. The reason I chose EastEnders in particular is because it can be argued that no matter the colour or the race of the person, everybody in that square kind of has a similar story.
They all have drama.
Yeah. So it's almost like, but within your specific community now, in real life, that kind of drama might not ever seep into it. So it's like, you're putting... that's when representation becomes tricky, because it's like, for instance now, imagine like a old school... I'm trying to think of a place. This is an interesting one. They're talking about... he's a fictional character, James Bond, but they're talking about James Bond being black. But then people are like, that can only work in certain places. He can't be a black James Bond in Russia because he'll stand out like a sore thumb, But some people just want to see a black James Bond. They don't care about the realism of it.
Yeah.
The same with EastEnders. Now, you might have, I don't know, something that happens in other communities, but it's being represented as a black or an Asian person in EastEnders just because that's their story, but they're just putting it onto a different family. But you're sitting there thinking that will never happen in our community. But then that's when representation becomes tricky. Is it that you just want to see somebody that looks like you, or do you want to see someone going through what is real to your community? If that makes sense.
Yeah, like I want something... it does make sense. Sorry. And I think everyone...
Talking up over there.
Everyone... like everyone wants something that's... I think it's tricky because you, of course, do want something that's real to your community, but then you don't want to be boxed in by what is real to your community.
Right.
Because then that's also saying that your community can't evolve and change, know? Like, for instance, storylines with Indian families being very, very strict on marrying people outside of the race or culture, or people within the family being gay, or this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And that's really, in real life, that's not the case for quite a lot of Indian families, where they can be a lot more liberal, a lot more open, and a lot more, different from how it may have been before. And then when you see that on TV all the time, it makes you think, I feel like it does less for the community as well, because it stops it from progressing, but then also makes you feel, if you aren't like that you aren't part of your community.
It's true. But then does excuse me, it's happening to me as well. Does the type of person that you see on the, like, obviously we're talking about media mainly right now, so for instance, this is why I asked, like, if you see Asian, do you see a representation? Because say like a news programmer or whatever, when you see them, what do you see? Do you just see a person, or do you see, oh yeah, look, an Asian person's telling the news, or like things of that nature? Because I don't know, sometimes it's strange, because it's like, I look at it and I'm like, in that situation, I don't see that as representation. I just see that as it should, like, somebody telling the news is somebody telling the news, right? Like, culture's got nothing to do with it, because you're all reading the same thing.
Yeah.
But have you ever noticed when it does come to the news that there's certain things that are reserved for certain people?
What do you mean?
Like there's certain stories or there's certain moments where I'm sit down and I thought about it the other day and I'm like, I've never seen an ethnic person deliver this news, but the news is the news, so it shouldn't matter who's delivering it, right?
Who delivers it? Well, can you give an... Well, I really don't watch the news at all.
I haven't for a long time, but...
So can you give like an example of what you mean by
like
certain stories?
Alright, this is the most recent that I did see on the news, yeah, was just coverage over the war in Iraq. Was it Ukraine? Your ass. I'm getting back a long time.
Long time, yeah.
In Ukraine, yeah. And
yeah.
There was two elements. Like I watched around that time, I think I saw the news like 3 times that same week. And it was, first of all, I saw it when they was talking about when Putin or whatever happened, when he made his announcement call. And I saw who delivered that news. It was just a normal, it was an English person, sorry. Caucasian English person, yeah.
But doesn't that say a lot though, that you was like, oh, it's a normal person? Like, do you know what I mean? Because even before we kind of moved into this part of the convo, I was thinking like, when I do see like an Indian news person or presenter, that's the first thing I notice. I'm like, oh, this is what I'm saying. They're not, a particular, like what you regularly would see. And then I start looking at, okay, what kind of Indian person is this? Like what kind did they choose? Blah, blah, blah. And I feel like that in itself is the issue. Do you know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't feel like it's a true representation sometimes. Sometimes it's almost like that person looks almost token to me. And it shouldn't be like that, because like I'm saying, the news is meant to be the news. Like I don't believe the news, but I mean their delivery of the news shouldn't change just based on who's saying it, because it's on the controlled media. It's not like YouTube where you can choose who you want to see given that news. It's the BBC or ITV or Channel 4 or whatever. Like things like that of that nature are always a bit sketchy with me when it comes to representation. But on the flip side of media, how do you feel when you see an Asian comedian and he's doing stereotypical Asian jokes about Asian people?
It's so funny you say that. I was thinking about that today because that came up on my, on YouTube Shorts. I was scrolling through and that's kind of what happened. And way back, like when I was younger, I used to love that because I was like, oh my God, there's finally like, an Asian person doing these kinds of jokes and stuff. And now I kind of feel the same. I'm not going to lie, because
no,
because they're talking about their experience and parts of that I can relate to. So it's right? Funny, yeah. And even when I see like, East Asian people talk about stuff from their culture, I like it because I'm like, they're sharing something about them and that's their personal experience.
Right.
I think it's different when you have like a production and then there's the same typical character. But one thing I do like more though, and I've noticed it lately because I think times have changed, is seeing more, Asian comedians who are joking about things that aren't just Asian related or Indian related, jokes about dating or this or that, and acknowledging that, we all do that. So I think, I like that.
Because I think like I feel like that is good representation, because it's like you're showing elements of your culture that where people from your culture will relate, but then you're showing the other side that we can also relate to, because we're living in the same world, like the Western world, where we're going through just regular stuff that it doesn't matter what color you are, you're going through this as well. And
I do find it like almost cringy when I come across comedians or people who kind of pull stereotypical things from their culture just for the laughs kind of thing. It feels stale to me now.
100%. But there's a difference between like you said, a comedian doing it on their own platform or whatever,
and using their actual anecdote and story and their compared real to like experience.
a program, like a BBC special, not special, but I don't know. You know when they do these stupid sketch shows or whatever, and it's
hate
like those make me sick.
Always like the corner shop guy. It's just so long.
Those make me sick.
That, yeah.
But then I was sitting there and I was thinking, am I a hypocrite? Because like I would never watch a BBC show called Wagwan or whatever. Like I would never do that, yeah, because I know what to expect.
Yeah.
But then like on TikTok, there's like some guy, and it's like he posts videos all day, like often, and it's like things that black people do, and I'll watch it, and he'll do different scenarios, and I can watch that because it's like some of it is funny and some of it I can relate to. Other stuff is just like, are you like, but now if that was turned into a stereotypical program, I couldn't watch it. So I'm like, am I being hypocritical, or is there like some, I don't know, because it's controlled media. I think that's what it comes down to, controlled media.
Yeah, controlled media. And also I feel like not even controlled media, just that sense of control in general too. Because if someone's doing their own thing, like posting their stuff on TikTok and they're sharing, you know, stuff from their culture and things like that, then that is cool. And I think that's fine. Although, like I said, you can always tell when someone is being inauthentic and purposely trying to pull from their culture. But I think it's different when it's a production and a show and there's like a writer's room and people have put effort into making a character that is just so typical, and you're like, okay, this is two-dimensional. Yeah. This is just the funny Indian in the show, you know?
Yeah.
And then they play up those things that I don't like.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Like, that's what I mean. I feel like, representation in the media anyway. Do you know what I like? I like the people behind the scenes sometimes, seeing their involvement in it more than the person on the camera, like on the screen. So I like to know that there might be someone from our background behind the scenes certain times more than the person on the camera. But like something that you just said that was key was like, if I'm watching a film and somebody's funny and they just happen to be Indian or they happen to be black and they're not even telling jokes about the culture, but they're just funny. I think that's good representation.
Me too, because it just shows, because that is representation. Like, you're having people on there and you're seeing, you know, parts of who you are displayed in a way that isn't forcing you to be a certain way. Which I think is important. It shows that, like, we do all have a shared experience, even though it may be different in certain ways, but we do.
No, definitely. But as somebody that, I don't know, as a creative, if you was invited to do something, but you wasn't, like, do you think you would be conscious of the fact that you might be seen as a representation of your race and culture?
Well, actually, that happened once where I did like this drawing thing where you can like be the life model and everyone draws you and stuff for this Mother Earth themed thing. And then the girl invited me back for another thing and I was like, oh cool, and this time round she didn't tell me like what the theme was and all of that stuff. She just wanted the yes or no. So I was like, oh, I guess she'll tell me later. When I saw it, it was all about like really specific to Asian women and their experience as like oppressed women, and I was like, that is I was like, what the fuck?
Oh, what, you had to stand there for them to draw you?
No, I was like, oh, actually I can't make that date.
So what was you doing the first time? No, just out of
interest. That's it. I had to stand there or sit there or do different poses and then stay there for like 10 minutes, then change a pose and people would draw you, which was really fun. It was really cool. But you really feel like a work of art. But yeah, that was weird. I was like, what the hell? No wonder you didn't tell me about this beforehand, which is already bad enough. And then it made me think, like, did you actually choose me because I've worked with you before, or because you're like, she's Indian, you know? And also, this experience and story doesn't relate to me. So what the fuck? I can't remember what it was. But it was a very specific Asian women experience, and it wasn't mine. And I was just like, very offended. More than offended, actually. It was just like, ugh, are you serious?
I mean, in something like that, it's a bit tricky. But
and I saw it on Facebook, like the whole thing, and I was like, you want me to be here? That? This is insane.
Wow, it's crazy. It's crazy. But is that very different to like casting, would you say? Because if you've written a role for an Asian actress and you're an Asian actress.
Well, that's the thing, like I think there's two things. So if it's a story that's about being Asian in terms of what you just said, like a role written for an Asian actress, then fine. You know, that's your story as an Asian woman writing about an Asian, you know, a role specific for an Asian actress, fine. But like, I think it's different when you've written something and there's a set of characters and then you've written, you know, one character which is so stereotypically Indian, you know. I think that's
so like you see the what's it called, Sex Education, the Asian Indian girl, is it a girl in there? And
right. Guy, I think there's
could they have been played by somebody of a different race, or did it have to be somebody?
They could have been played by somebody of a different race, and that's what I think is good representation, where you can have, like, you know, anyone kind of playing a character.
I get that, yeah. But don't you enjoy seeing your culture on the screen?
I do enjoy seeing my culture on the screen. Like, I like seeing things about, like, you know, if someone's character's sister's getting married or something like that, and then they're all in the traditional clothing and stuff like that, like things that are undeniably your culture in there, I think are really nice to see. Like, it does make you feel good to see that on the screen. But I think when you see like the same Indian person in the same square glasses doing this, like that's annoying to me.
Yeah, no, I get that. That's why I kind of use the EastEnders thing, because I reckon, obviously.
Or the same Indian mother, like, you know,
the same just, type of birds. Yeah. But like, you see, like the wedding thing now. I reckon in a program like, I don't know for a fact, but a program like EastEnders, if there was like a Ghanaian guy and a Ghanaian girl getting married, I don't know if they would take the time to incorporate how a Ghanaian wedding would be, or they would just make them get married the English way on screen. And when it's like that, that's when it's like, that's not representation, because you've just basically put black people like on the screen.
Part of our culture.
So it's a tricky one. But media, sometimes you have to remember who's controlling that type of media as well, and how much do you expect from them. So I'm all for people entering those spaces, but I think you have to be kind of careful what you accept to do, because you are in some instances anyway, you are being looked at as a representation of that culture.
And I think that's unfortunate, but I think unavoidable now. If your culture is like, or if, you know, ethnic minorities in general are not represented often, then people who are represented in that space, a lot is going to kind of be on them.
It's true. But then you got the flip side of like programs, like I mentioned earlier, like Top Boy. I don't know if you've seen it, all of it. No, well, some people haven't seen it all through. So I'm saying, as a Londoner, you know and are fully aware that that's not a reality for everyone, But there's going to be people outside of London that are going to look at that.
I think everybody
that lives like that, dresses that certain way, or lives on an estate or whatever, is living that lifestyle or comes from that lifestyle.
Even within London.
Within London as well. Especially nowadays, because London's full up of people that's not from London.
Or even people who in London who like don't live on estates and stuff, they're going to look at people who do, who, you know, they could, well, actually, I don't know. Yeah,
you're probably right though, because sometimes when you go to those parts of town, you realize how different things are.
Oh, majorly.
How different things are.
Majorly different.
But do you think programs like that help or hinder with representation?
Programs like what?
Like Top Boy. Because it's like, it's a subculture in London for sure. Like there are people, obviously it's dramatized, but there are people that does represent.
Yeah.
But it's been dramatized to the point where me being a black guy could go in an environment and people would assume, rightly or wrongly, that I come from that, or that I live the same way.
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes that's not great.
Yeah.
But other times it's like, who cares? Because you know the true you. Like for instance, the other day I was in a office building, and like I just had my hair out, and then I was talking to a black lady, and she was like, "Oh, you're about to get your hair done or whatever." She could tell, obviously. I was like, yeah. But she was like, "Oh, yeah, you She said something, and I was like, I don't care what these people say. Like I know that this is what it looks like because I'm taking it out, and I'm gonna go get it retwisted, whatever." And then she was just like, yeah, nah, that's good that you feel like that, because you know that they might look at you like a thug with your hair like that. And I was just like, that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Because what? like
I thought you were gonna say something so deep.
No, because we're in an environment right now where even if you do think that of me, the environment that we're in right now, I can't be a fuck right now, can I? Like I can't be. Right in this environment that we're in right this second. Maybe outside this building, if we step out onto the road.
But we're in the building.
For me to be in this building, obviously I've got credentials to be in this building right now.
But do you think that's an issue with representation of media or representation within workplaces?
A bit of both. And that's what I kind of wanted to segue into.
Yeah, me too.
Like,
what about representation in real life and corporate places?
How important is it for you to see somebody that looks like you in certain roles?
Extremely. Because when you don't, you really feel like the only one there kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
And you're like adapting to a certain way of being, a certain way of speaking.
A certain white way of being. I caught it. No,
I didn't even say that. But
I'm sure.
A certain way of being, a certain way of speaking.
Yeah, no, for real.
And you naturally gravitate towards people who, like, you know, seem who look like you, I guess. And even that can be an issue, because just because someone looks like you doesn't mean that they are for you or like you. Do you know what I mean? I've
fell victim to that before. I saw somebody that I thought, yeah, she's black. She must understand. The complete opposite is like they almost, even if they did understand, it's like they've done everything to try and distance themselves from even being associated. It's like, are you trying to tap dance for them, or like what is your?
Yeah,
I don't get the angle. But,
it's a lot, man. It's a lot. I've really decided to just really not care anymore. Like,
so that's what I was gonna say. If you don't see someone, if you don't see a representation of you, would that put you off of striving for certain things? No,
because I feel like there's a difference between representation within. I think there's so many things wrong with the corporate culture, you know, and I think corporate culture asks for specific things. And a friend of mine actually gave some good advice where, like, you can think that part of why you're not getting in certain places in a role is due to like culture and representation and stuff like that. But most of it is because there's certain things that people want at work. And that, unfortunately, is not all the things that they've been saying that they want. Honesty, openness, transparency, a collaborative working. But no one wants that. They want the person that they interviewed, and that's it. You know, that's who they invested in. That's who they want. The only thing about work is strategy. So you need to be an assertive person. You need to be someone who's constantly, showing keenness and enthusiastic and blah, 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 and this, that, and the other. Like, these are character things that you need to have there to get further at work. Like, people want people who are always going on about their weekend and this, and blurring the lines. And it's up to you to decide how invested you are in that, and I've decided I'm not that invested in, building just a corporate career. Like, I'm fortunately also a creative person, so I have stuff outside of work that I'm trying to do. So for me, I found a workplace where I get to work from home most of the time, so I don't have to kind of deal with these things too often and interact that closely. So I don't need to worry or feel the absence of more people who are like me, and the lack of people like me in the office and stuff like that. And also a smaller team, so it's not all going by personality or whatever. Like, this is the kind of workplace where they really do credit you by merit, so my work will count. And that's the thing. And it is quite annoying, because when you are in other workplaces where that's not really the case, you can't help but think or notice that this person's getting further ahead because they are of a certain culture and a certain gender. And it's undeniable that that's happening.
So obvious, 9 times out of 10.
So obvious. And I think I said it to you before when I started a new role, and I was like, and I'd been out of work for a while and then working from home completely for a while, so it's the first time I'd gone back into a corporate place. And I was like, it's so weird how I go into work and every day I feel like I'm putting on a version of myself, and then you can see other people going to work and just being themselves the whole day. They're not really code switching.
No, that's
and it's exhausting.
That's not even, it's not healthy, I don't feel.
It's not healthy.
Because you're suppressing yourself for what? It doesn't make sense.
It's a lot. So it's nice that I can not be there.
You don't have to do that. 100%. Does certain industries now, like, take yourself out of what you want to do, because what you want to do, I feel like, is highly represented enough for you to already have that ambition. But say you're a kid or somebody, take it, I don't know, because it's difficult, but take yourself back to being 13, 14 years old, and you're really interested in doing something, but you've never seen anybody like that looks like you in that field. Do you think in those situations that representation is key for you to see somebody that looks like you doing something that you potentially want to do? Like, say, I don't know, an astronaut, or
oh my god, I was just thinking
because that's like the typical
on the same wave today.
Like, go on. An astronaut, or even say it's highly represented in your community actually, but say there wasn't any Asian doctors or nurse, like do you think...
Well, I was going to use that example in the opposite way, because obviously times have changed now, but growing up, like, there weren't many people who were Asian who were actors or singers or creative or spoken word artists or hosts or this, that, and the other. So, but there were loads of people who were like doctors and nurses and lawyers and stuff like that. Like, you'd hear about that quite often. So I think representation is so important, because I feel like it makes you feel like certain things are less of an opportunity, or like you're going to have to fight against something, whether that's your own community, to get to a certain place that isn't normally frequented by people who look like you. So I think it's not just key, it's essential. But I do think things are changing now with how especially with the internet, like how accessible certain careers are. Like, you'll see, like, anyone could be doing anything,
literally now,
and I think that's important. And I like that social media is doing that for people. Like, even on TikTok, trends of doctors talking about things or this, that, and the other, and everyone could be anything, and I like that.
Are you ever surprised by what you see nowadays, like where you see your people? Because there's still some uncharted fields, I would say.
What uncharted fields would you say?
Sports.
That's a good one.
Sports.
That's hard for me to relate to because I'm just not in that world at all.
Yeah.
So I need, yeah.
Where was the last, like, Hollywood Asian superstar? Like, when was the last one? I can't think of someone off the top of my head.
Neither can I. I mean, the only person that comes to my head is Priyanka Chopra, the one who married Nick Jonas. Although I wonder if that's part of her fame in Hollywood. But yeah.
Model? There isn't one off the top of my head that I can think.
I feel like there's I don't know actresses' names, but I feel like there's a few up and coming or kind of up ones now in the show Bridgerton.
Oh, I've heard of the show.
Yeah,
I've not seen it again.
I haven't seen it, so I can't say. I feel like that question of finding like the biggest whatever person now is quite an interesting question, because I feel like almost everyone's a celebrity.
In a sense, I see what you mean, yeah.
So who's the biggest of anything?
True. But within respective fields, you can always have some sort of ranking system, I guess. But like even, because I watch a lot of like business clips or YouTube, whatever, podcasts, whatever. And it's refreshing to see the range of people that come on here. So you might have a Asian guy or you might have anyone like.
Yeah.
And whereas before you wouldn't really see that, like you said, it was kind of shoehorned into academic studies, doctors, lawyers. That kind of seemed like the threshold, but now it's like. And
then that also being represented in the media too.
100%. But now but even on a day to day though, you're just walking down the street. That's where you would commonly see certain types of people. But now it's like you can walk down the street. You can. Like at one point, me and my friends used to spend a lot of time in like Chinatown and those areas, yeah. And we witnessed the shift. Like we was not just gonna say the first because that's ridiculous, isn't it? But when we was going into like bubble tea shops, there was nobody that looked like us in there.
That is so mad. I can totally believe that because that's only really become a thing, like bubble tea kind of recently, right? There was nobody in there like that. And I'm not saying it's because of us, but 100%. Yeah. There has been occasions. Let's take that shop out of the reckoning, even though that's my claim to fame, but I won't, you know. You started bubble tea.
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying there's. Have you ever been in a place, where you started going and there was nobody that looked like you there, and then all of a sudden, now there are. And I feel like I've done it, where I've been. You might be walking past somewhere. You look inside. You look to see who's inside, and if you see people that look like you might feel a bit more comfortable to go inside there.
Yeah.
I think that's a natural thing, and that is real life representation. Take away the media, whatever. That's just you seeing something and being like, that looks like a safe space, or that looks like a cool space. Let me go in there because of who's inside there.
Have you ever not done something or kind of been deterred from something because you were like, oh, that's not something people from my community usually do?
100%. And I broke it the other day.
Did you? Okay, go on. What? Now I'm intrigued. What happened? What did you do?
I got a pedicure.
I knew you were going to say something like that. Oh my God, I'm so glad you're doing that though. That is amazing. How was it?
No, it was good.
It's a good experience.
It was good.
There you go.
Obviously, I didn't go by myself or with my missus.
Yeah, I know. We know.
It was good, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it was just funny. I mean, sorry, because I'm sitting in the chair and I'm seeing people walk past, and you're seeing a various type of looks. Yeah, but it's like the crazy thing about that is you can go to certain other communities and it's the norm. Like, or even other fields. Like, I believe, I don't know for a fact, but I believe that sportsmen probably get it often.
I believe a lot of people do and should. Like, I literally was saying to my friend the other day, I was like, I wish guys did more self-care evenings and did like the whole face mask exfoliating experience, because you just feel so different.
But the funny thing is, sometimes all it takes is for you to see somebody do it and you realize it is cool to do that. Like, representation is a weird thing sometimes. It's the smallest things, like all you need to see, because it sometimes is just like a reminder that you can do it as well.
Yeah.
Not that you need it though, but you don't need it.
It's just opening up possibilities that you wouldn't have even considered.
But who told you that you can't do it?
No one, but it's media. Like it's a subconscious thing because you're not seeing it. And it's important to see it.
It is. It is. Very much so.
Yeah, it is important to see it. And it's important to like even what you said earlier on about writing characters and stuff. Like, if you were writing a character and then in your mind the character was then Indian, would you change things, you know?
Is that you're asking me, or
yeah, like would you, like that's a thing, a like
rhetorical
that's
question,
you know?
I wasn't sure.
Neither am I now. It is rhetorical, I guess, but that's what I mean, like, because then if that happens, is that truly representation? You know?
But there is such thing as good representation and bad representation, though. Like, not the funniest, but one of the ones that kind of I never understood was like music videos, yeah? There was a period where, obviously growing up watching music videos in America, a lot of the models and video vixens were black, yeah? And then there was this shift where it became more white and European. And then you saw a lot of outrage from the black girls, like, oh, they don't ever pick the black girls anymore. But what some of these girls was doing in the video is like, is that how you really want to be represented though? Like, because it's very like, what's the word I'm thinking of? Not degrading, but almost. Yeah. Almost. Like, is that your best representation? Like, sometimes just being there isn't a good thing.
That's a good point.
So there is such thing as bad representation as well as good representation. Representation for the sake of representation is not always...
It's not representation. I don't think it is at all. Like, that's just perpetuating certain things, you know? And then also the dangerous part about it is that people who aren't part of that culture just assume that this must be the way, you know? I had a manager who would constantly say certain things. Or when I'd go... You know, when I'd meet a guy and stuff and he'd just say, oh, you must be from like a really good family, like blah, 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 and this, that, and the other. My family are good, but it definitely was not whatever he was picturing. So it just makes you feel weird, you know? 100%. And then you also feel kind of like, almost like not necessarily bad about yourself, but you also feel like you're not living up to something if you're not like certain parts of the culture that's being represented, because you're like, oh, you know, Indian girls don't do that, so blah blah blah.
Have you ever felt like that?
Yeah, definitely I felt like that, you know.
What about you see growing up, like,
but what's hard about that too is that you think, because you think like, oh, I'm doing things that Indian girls just don't do, blah, blah, blah. And then you also think, oh, my community is not really going to accept me anymore. And then you also think that you're the only one doing that. Right. And then as I've gotten older, I've obviously met more people who are similar to me. And it's like, oh, you know, it's not just me kind of thing.
But you know what's crazy? Because you can have an encounter with somebody from a specific culture or background, and if that's the only encounter you've had with someone from that could
then
be your representation.
That's the only, you know, the only thing.
Because I remember there was a point I'm not saying it applies to all Indian girls.
Okay.
But there was a point,
yeah,
where growing up, it was a belief that Indian girls was like so innocent, forbidden, strict. And then you grow up, you have one or two encounters with other Indian girls, and you realize they're just girls. Like,
right.
they've got
That's
the same wild side, etc.
Yeah.
Like, there's a balance in that. But if you're only meeting a certain type, that's your representation. So sometimes you have to break the boundaries to see that.
Yeah. And, you know, again, coming back to it, like, if you're only seeing a certain type of person on TV, then you're going to think that, yeah, that's how that person is, you know?
No, 100%. 100%. That's why I was like,
if that's what you're going to have on the screen all the time, then just don't throw Indian people in there then. Like, just, you know.
That's crazy. That's one thing that I'm grateful for, is the fact of like where I grew up and the friends that I had. I was exposed to different cultures, different environments. So even if I had a perception of the white English person, I had white English friends. So, and I've entered their homes and I've seen, wait.
But even that, you know, like even with white English people, there's so many different
types of them.
There's not just one type of English person. So
100%.
that's why representation really, really does matter. But, you know, we see a lot of those different versions on TV. It would be great to see a lot of different versions of other cultures.
100%. But I feel like it's getting better now because, like I said, we've got more control over what we see.
Yeah.
And who's behind the things that we see now as well. So
right. Well, that's what I was going to say. Exactly. Like, there's more people kind of breaking into those, or not even breaking in. Like, I think people are going into and being in those industries now and having a hand in what's being put out there, which is good.
No, 100%.
And social media helps a lot. I feel like as many things about social media that aren't great, like social media has been so great in being eye-opening for different cultures and how they are, and kind of breaking stereotypes. Yeah,
definitely. Definitely. Well, all right.
Well.
It's that time of the episode.
Yes, it is. Word of advice.
And what would yours be?
That is so weird to do a word of advice for this episode, because what advice can you get? Don't watch TV? I don't know. My word of advice would probably be, which is funny because it relates to our earlier conversation before we kind of launched into the episode, but I think trust what you see off screen. Yeah. You know, if you're watching something on TV and you find it funny, I'm not saying don't laugh at the jokes. I'm just saying understand that what you're seeing just isn't necessarily real life.
100%.
So if you've seen someone of a particular culture on screen and you haven't met a person of that culture in real life, don't think that they're all going to be like this character that you've seen. That's a character.
Definitely.
So that's my word of advice. Keep an eye out for fake news.
100%. What would I say? I would say, it's not really a word. It's more like a sentence. Because
I was a paragraph. So.
Yeah, for real. What I'm trying to say is basically, don't wait to see somebody in a position that you want to, in something that you want to do. Like, it's doable. 9 times out of 10, it is doable, regardless of if you've seen someone do it or not, because there are people doing it. It's just sometimes it's not being represented in the right way. Yeah,
I love that advice.
Yeah.
That is, I wish I had said that.
I mean, you know, at least one of us did.
I'll take it on board though, because that's so true.
Yeah.
That's really true. Well, all right, guys. Then. Well, until the next time.
Peace.